What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to a special Halloween episode-esque of At Home with Mark. This is season 7, episode 11. So this is a long time coming. Been talking to these fine folks for quite a minute about getting them on the show. So make sure I don't mispronounce your names. Is Maritzaida or Zeta?
Maritzaida.
Okay. And AJ.
AJ, one, yeah.
And you guys are one hell of a duo. And I cannot wait to hear more about the history of this style of music you guys are playing because I'm fascinated by it. But before we get there, there's some other places and things I want to get into because you guys have a really cool story. So working with Side Hustle Records right now, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So, and when I talked to them a little bit about you guys, and AJ, you filled me in a little bit too, but can you guys tell me the story about how you guys came together, A, and then B, how it flourished into this like musical partnership as well?
Yeah, so back in so I'll start the story. Feel free to jump in.
Sure.
But back in 2008, I was leaving Greensboro College. So I was doing my undergraduate there here in Greensboro, North Carolina, just a small little private school. And I was wondering, what am I going to do with my life? I play guitar, like what's next for me? And I had some gigs around town and I had a bunch of students. I had a studio down near Guilford College where I was teaching a lot of kids. And, it was a lot of fun doing that, but I wanted to see if there was something else out there. And I grew up in, as we were talking before, Mark, I grew up in Maryland. So I was in sort of that DC area and I was really familiar and heavily exposed to military bands. So I saw the Army bands quite a bit. I saw the Air Force bands and Navy band quite a bit. And I eventually knew some of the musicians in those bands just through other people and learned a little bit about what they do. So it just kind of occurred to me one day when I was figuring out what am I going to do to see if there was any openings in any of these bands. And it turns out that the Air Force band in Virginia had an opening. And I went and, long story short, I went and auditioned for it. I got the job. And then a few months later, I was on a plane down to Texas to go to basic training. So spent a couple months there doing a lot of push-ups and getting yelled at. And straight from there, I went over to the band in Virginia. It was called the Heritage of America Band. And I was assigned as a guitar player. That was my full-time job. And during my tenure there, I got to play in a lot of different bands with a lot of really great players. So I played, I spent a lot of time in our rock and pop bands, but I also played in our jazz ensemble. I did a tour as a classical guitar player with a woodwind quintet, which was really interesting, going out and playing a bunch of like Piazzolla music. And
wasn't that one in Europe?
No, I did a tour in Europe. So I went out to Europe with the Jazz Ambassadors. I think that's what they were called. So it was their jazz ensemble. We went and toured through there. I did a tour through the Middle East and with a rock band. I think we did 10 or 11 countries out in the Middle East and entertained the troops and played for all sorts of folks. But along the way, I hired a guitar player. We had an opening for another guitar player. And his name was or is Alberto Rosado. And I'll just give a plug for him because he's a Sweetwater rep. So he's my Sweetwater rep.
Oh, nice.
And he should be y'all's as well.
Yeah. so Alberto, he's from Puerto Rico. He's a killer guitar player. I was so glad that we were able to hire him. And so he was like going through the process of, he got the job. Now he's got to do all of his paperwork. And one of the things in that process was he had to go to his recruiter. So he went to his recruiter.
I'll jump on here.
Yep, and go ahead.
And I'll take it from you. Well, at that time, the recruiter in Puerto Rico was my brother in that area. So my brother, who just retired from the U.S. Air Force, congratulations.
That's awesome.
And Alberto was there to sign some papers at his house. And you know how brothers are. I happened to walk out and he made a comment like, because I was in a transitional period. So I was living with him at that time, and he said, a comment like, "Hey, she sings. Why don't you just take her away to the band with you?" And Alberto said, "Actually, there are auditions for singers." And my brother, who's a recruiter, he was like, "Wait, there's singers in the band? I thought there was just, instruments." So long story short, he signed me up, and then it was my turn to go to basic training and get yelled at and, sob and, then get on another airplane. And I came to Virginia to the same band as Aaron. And my experience was very different because I did not grow up with any of the music that was being played at all. I am not scared to say that I was not exposed to, the basics of jazz or any of those things. I do have a musical background. I used to play an instrument, a woodwind instrument. So I know how to, and I was in choir all the time. So I know how to sight read and, my chords and all that good stuff, but never quite, it wasn't my, I didn't go to school for that like that. So when I went to the Heritage of America band, it's different, right? Now I'm at a professional level, and it was such a huge adjustment for me, not only musically, but culturally, because I had never lived outside of Puerto Rico. So it was my first time, and I actually went to the band in Christmas time. So I didn't know the basic carols.
Oh,
yeah, they don't sing the same ones, right?
Yeah, that makes
not at
sense.
all.
And why would they?
Not at all. The only thing that I knew about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is that he had a shiny nose, and that was it. So it was such a huge adjustment for me, culturally, musically, absolutely. Just my world just went 180. So I was really lucky that after, I think y'all went to the desert and did your tour. And when you came back, they reshifted the bands and they put me in the popular rock ensemble. And I was paired with a front person because my background is in theater as well. So that's my undergrad is in theater. So I know about stage presence and stage blocking and all that good stuff, but it's not the same as leading an ensemble. So I got paired with this wonderful sergeant front person that was super energetic, super in your face. So I was able to not only develop musically, because we also had Michelle as a music director.
Yeah, we had a piano player at the time. She's just like a really fine all-around musician, great arranger, great player, great singer, and just like really was interested in developing other people.
Yes.
Right. And that's like, hard to find people like that, but it's really important, especially if you're in a band and you're bringing in newer, younger people, that you have somebody or more than one person that's willing to take the time to try to develop them.
And I was lucky, like very, very lucky, because my range was really tiny. I mean, if you don't use the instrument right, you're limited to what you've always done. But the more you do it, or if you're lucky to be paired with people like that, like Michelle and like Sergeant Vasquez, if I wasn't paired with them, I don't know how my career would have turned out musically, or how I would have grown, because she pushed me musically, and he pushed me in terms of fronting a band. So it was such a wonderful experience, and that's how we started doing music together.
And then in 2015, we both got orders to Japan. So we were heading to Yokota Air Base in Japan, And when we were out there was one other person that also from like our same team in Virginia got orders to go. Is a sound guy. He's more than just a sound guy though. So I'll say that, or sorry, sound people, audio engineers. He's more than just an audio engineer. He's really a great musician in his own right, really solid drummer, solid singer, does a lot in electronic music. So really a very talented guy. So it was the three of us that went out there, and it was like, these are the only two people I know in this country. Right. And we did a lot of gigging throughout, not just Japan, but all of Asia. We both went down to Australia. I went out to Vietnam, and you went to Brunei. We both went to Korea. Like there's like all sorts of places we got to go and tour out there. And there was two primary groups. There was a rock band and a jazz band. And for part of the time we were in the same group, for part of the time we were in separate groups. But we also had our own like acoustic group together out there, which was really just playing like pop tunes, and stuff like that. It was a chance to get out in Tokyo and actually just play some gigs for like the local folks there. And they were always rather interested in seeing, a couple non-Japanese people coming out there and playing for them. So, but somewhere along the way, I did this for 10 years. And Mata, you were about 5 years, a little over 5 years there. And somewhere along the way, it was no longer fun for me. It was work. And I really did not enjoy going to work and picking up a guitar. And I know people are like, oh my God, that sounds crazy. Your job's to go to work and play guitar. That's not the full story though. With military bands. And I'm not here to say anything super negative or anything, but it's still a military unit. You're still in the military. Your personal life, your work life, sometimes that balance gets thrown off quite a bit. And I just feel really out of balance working there. And so at that point I decided, this thing that was essentially my dream to play guitar for a living really was no longer my dream. And there was other things I was getting interested in, like professionally. So that's when I made the decision to go back to school and pursue those other things professionally. So, and Mata, essentially you did the same thing. You went back to school and did your master's as well. And I decided in 2018 is when I got out. So, and Mata came with me here to North Carolina, and we just kind of like put our roots down here, and we largely put music behind us. It was like something we did every now and then. Like I would pick up a guitar, and every now and then somebody would call and be like, hey, I really need a guitar player. Can you? And it was always like, like,
I really want to do that.
And like the joy was gone for me. Like I really just didn't experience joy playing music anymore. So why would I keep doing it, right? And then I don't know what happened, but it was about 1.5 years ago, like something went off, and I was like, I kind of want to play music again. I just need some sort of direction to go, because when you're a military guitar player, like I said earlier, you might be playing for the jazz band, and then all of us like doing the Freddie Green thing, and then all of a sudden you're playing like Van Halen covers, and like you lose, in a lot of ways you lose kind of like your own personal identity, because the expectation is you become this jack of all trades that can just go do whatever gig you're asked to do. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm a great jazz guitar player or a great rock guitar player. I've never really like realized the level on those that I think guys like you and a lot of other guys you've had on your show have certainly done. But it was definitely like good enough to do the gig. Okay, move on to the next gig kind of thing. So I think that's kind of where some of the passion, fell off there. But about 1.5 years ago, just an idea kind of came in, and it was like, why don't we like play some music together, but this time let's do the music you grew up with.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And for a while you actually had a hard time articulating to me what that was. Well, so I had to do like a little investigating, like give me a collection of songs that you're talking about. And you would describe it as bohemian music, right? Bohemia. And that is very an accurate description. but really like stylistically what is known as Bolero.
Sí.
And then that started we built this room in our house right here, which is really my office, but we designed it so it's like a studio. Like, let's put it to maybe some use for a change. And we sat down and we picked just a few tunes and just started recording them. And I thought, man, these actually sound kind of good. Is it just me, or like, do they actually sound? And you know George Sluppick, great drummer.
Oh man,
and one of our closest friends. And so I sent it to him. And by the way, I forgot to mention, somewhere along the way we connected with Charlie Hunter, and we started going out to see him play. And then that turned into like we just kind of hang out with him and his wife.
To my crazy Puerto Rican ways.
Yeah. So
I'm a person that I get into it, you know. My husband, just real quick, when we went to see Charlie for the first time, Aaron tells me, hey, there's this incredible guitarist, and you know, he's playing like downtown in a small bar, and I really want to go. And I was like, okay, cool. And he's like, no, you don't understand.
Well, I think I described it as jazz, which Charlie, if he was here, he would slap me right now.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I mean, she got so excited when I said jazz guitar player.
Yes,
right?
Because I was super excited. Jazz was my favorite thing to do in the military. No.
Do you feel, let me ask you this. So for your voice, when you were talking about your range and everything, so this, I find this very interesting, being a singer and a male singer who doesn't have a very large range, but I want to expand it. What was helping you push outside of your comfort zone? Like, I know you said you had like that great MD, a couple of great people that your guys are working with. Was it them lighting a fire into you, saying, you can do this, you can sing this song, I know you can? Or was it just like repetition and working and breathing and learning your physiology? Like, what was it?
Yeah, great question. And a few things. It was a combination of both, right? It was the opportunity to do new things that were very challenging for me. I mean, challenging, very challenging. I'm talking about not only vocally, but stylistically. It was completely new to me. I had never sang or listened to Aretha Franklin other than whatever would appear in a popular movie, you know?
Right.
So it's not, and I am not ashamed to say that, because that's just the environment I grew up with, right? I wasn't exposed to that. It was not culturally relevant at the time for me, because that's not part of the makeup of the music that we grew up with in the island. So when I moved, I was super scared, because I knew that I had to be at a different level, and I wasn't there. I just wasn't. And I was very scared, but I had this musical director that, you know, would challenge me. Hey, Mara, like you said, you know, you can do this. I know you can do this. And I'd be like freaking out, you know, and we had these like isolated little rooms.
The practice rooms, yeah.
You know, and I was in there. And if you would be outside watching what was happening inside, I would be like, and she would be in the piano like, you got this. You got this. But it was all about having the opportunity of somebody that knows, oh, you got this, you can do it, and the repetition, but also being very, very careful with it, because you can hurt yourself. Because I mean, I was rehearsing 3-4 hours a day for somebody who never had never done something like that, right? And then be put in that context and having to do it 3 to 4 hours a day on something that she knows nothing about. So it was all about that repetition. It was all about that that person who put that in there, and she gradually did it. It wasn't like she knew what she was doing. I wasn't aware of that. She knew what she was doing. She was, inserting this tune here, and then she would, insert this other one in here, and I would have to, like level up. And then, but at the end of the journey, we're really good friends. So I would be like, you did this. You knew what you were doing. And she was like, of course I did. You had a really tiny range. You have to expand it and see what your limits were. Yeah. But she did it so in such a smart way that I was able to not be hurt and, not damage something. She would teach me technique, which it was very different when we started doing Spanish tunes. So when we went to see Charlie Hunter, and we got really excited. I got really excited when I saw that. I couldn't understand what I was seeing when I went to see him.
Yeah. I mean, I still don't understand what I'm saying. And
it bothers me to no end. Every time I see him, I'm just like, God damn it. Like, people like this piss me off. I love that guy so much, but like,
I mean,
he's out of this world.
It's something bizarre.
Let me interject this. One of the first times I saw him play, he was with Organ Trio. I think it was Sam Frybush. Is that another Side Hustle Records player?
He's killing.
Killer player. And so Charlie's in that organ trio, and he plays the normal guitar in there, right?
Yeah.
And he's just like tearing it up all night. And I just went up to him like, man, that was like mind-blowing, right? And he's like, oh man, this thing is so easy. I'm not sure if he exactly said it like that, but it was just like, my head's just in the clouds playing this thing, and it's like
doing it.
Man, it's like a toy. The other thing's the real deal. Yeah, I know. That makes me want to throw up in my mouth. I'm just like, come on, man.
100%.
So to conclude the story here, we recorded some stuff. George Slepik ended up going to the studio and laying down percussion stuff for us. Sounded really good. We at that point, we didn't really talk about music with Charlie. Charlie didn't really know our background. Like, he knew we were
actually
military.
We had a secret deal that we would not do that. We were like, listen, I really don't want him to hear me, because I don't want to, you don't want to be disappointed.
At this point, we had gotten to know him and his wife, and we were just kind of like hanging out, and like, that's cool. We have more to talk about other than music with them, and like that's kind of the vibe we liked. But his wife had called, and they needed, in my professional work, I do a little bit of web development work, and they needed some help with Charlie's website or something. So I went over to the house, and I'm sitting there, and I think she brought it up and said something like, I heard George went to the studio and did something for you guys. And I was like, oh yeah. And I just played it for her. And then she was like, hey, when Charlie comes in from, he has like a shed he practices in. Mm-hmm. When he comes in, you should let him hear that. And I was like, no, thanks.
And he knew I would have been like,
yeah. And I was just like, no, thanks. And then he comes in like a couple hours later, and, his wife was like, hey, you should hear this stuff that Aaron and Mata recorded. And I was like, yeah, it's all good. He's busy. Like, he doesn't need to hear that. And he's like, no, put it on. So I put it on. I played one tune, and he like had no reaction. I'm like, okay, it sucks. All right, got it. Mm-hmm. And he said, do you have any more? And I was like, yeah, we recorded 4 of them. So I played the next one, and he's like, do you have more? And I ended up playing all of them. And when he was done, I couldn't tell if it was like he was excited or he was angry. Like,
right?
Like, we've been hanging out for a while, and you didn't tell me your wife sang like that, and it was that whole thing. And then like sort of right in the moment, he had this vision for what this project would be. And he's like, don't release any of that. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut a record. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And then I'm like trying to relay this to her, and I'm like, Charlie, she's not going to believe anything I'm telling her, so you should just call her. And
I know
he actually texted me, and I was at a department store, and I got so hot, like my body got so hot. I was with my mother. She was visiting at that time. And then she looked at me and she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was on the floor because the floor was cold. And I was like, I don't understand. I feel like my brain is glitching and my body's reacting.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the whole story. That's how we got to this.
Yeah, and that was like a year ago. That was like
November.
that was this time last year. Yeah. And at some point, the details started to fill in over the next couple of months, which was, his biggest detail was, we're going to cut this record live around a single microphone. Mm-hmm. That was the biggest detail. Like, we're going to use a stereo ribbon microphone. We're going to have bass, and then Mata really wanted Quattro Puertorriqueño.
That was my only request.
Well, for your listeners who don't know what a Quattro Puertorriqueño is,
can you explain?
It's a double-stringed instrument, kind of like a mandolin, right? But it's almost the length of a guitar, and it's 4 sets of double strings. So it doesn't really look like, it looks more like a guitar, but it's got
like a skinny guitar.
And so it has a little bit of a wider range than a mandolin, but sonically it's very similar. Like those double stringed instruments sound. And then like the next step was like, okay, then who's going to play all this? So we found a Quattro player who we didn't know, but he's a Puerto Rican guy, and he happened to be living in Chicago. And like, I was telling everybody, this guy probably thinks this is a scam, because here I am texting him and telling him like, Charlie Hunter is going to be producing this record, and this is what it is. It's Bolero music and blah, 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 blah. And he was just so cool about it. He was like, okay, cool. And like, I buy him a plane ticket and everything. I'm like, Jose Carrasquillo, that's his name. Somebody has got to like come to the airport with me to pick this guy up, because he has no idea what he's walking into. Like, we've just, but he was very flexible and cool, and he showed up. So Jose, he's a marvelous musician, like not just a great Quattro player, but like a really refined musician and extremely easy to work with. So we were really fortunate that he was part of this. And then we were on the search for a bass player, and it was Charlie's idea. He said, I met this guy from Chapel Hill when I was down in Mexico, and he spent a lot of time in Miami playing with Latin bands. I think he'd be a good fit. And his name is Lowell Ringel, and he's from the Chapel Hill area of North Carolina, and now he lives in Chicago. So two of our full band members, coincidentally live in Chicago, and Charlie's intuition on that was right, because Lowell was a monster of a bass player.
We were so lucky.
I was gonna say, like, something that stuck out to me listening to the record was the upright. Just like how, I mean, first of all, how well that Mike picked everything up and balanced the way that you guys did is mind-boggling, because it's not like there's a lot going on, but there is sonically,
Yeah, well, and some of that is we were mixing ourselves as we were playing, not
like
just
a bluegrass band, almost
leaning forward a little bit and quieting down in certain parts, and like, so you do and for 4 people that had never really played together, I think the end result turned out to be pretty awesome.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful record. Like, and I think that, and then your voice motto really, really pops on that first record. And I feel like when I listened to it through, the stuff that stood out to me musically and outside of how beautiful your voice sounds, but like the instrumentation of like the classical instrument with the Quattro together, like I never would have thought of that combination of 2-string instruments like that playing together in a way, because it feels like anytime I hear classical music, that's an orchestra in and of itself, like classical guitar, right? Mm-hmm. So like you can cover so much sonic space with just that instrument, but I feel like the Quattro like complements that other instrument so well.
Well, our Quattro player had a pretty unique role musically, because our format is models after a classic Bolero format, which is the trio, right? So, and that is typically 2 guitars and a requinto. And for those of you who don't know what a requinto is, it's a nylon string guitar, just a little bit shorter and tuned up, let's say a fourth. So it's the low strings of A, and they're playing all the lead stuff while the other two are just, playing the rhythm stuff. Sometimes they accompany the lead, but you can talk a little bit about our instrumentation.
Sure, of course. So when Charlie, after my my initial shock, and we got to talk, I said, "Listen, Charlie, my only request," because he was talking about how he didn't want percussion, he wanted a bass in the guitar. I said, my only request is that there is a Puerto Rican cuatro, so un cuatro puertorriqueño, and that a Puerto Rican is playing it. And he just looked at me and he was like, that is great. I think for me, I grew up listening to trios. So I grew up with my grandparents because I come from a blended family. So my dad lived outside of Puerto Rico and my mom was a working mom. So I was mostly with my grandparents. And, abuelo and abuela's radio you don't touch. So and my abuelo loved rancheras and boleros. A lot of boleros are played as rancheras and vice versa. And it is that instrumentation where it's the two guitars and the requinto. And the requinto is like having another singer in the band. Because it does all those lead parts and all that intricate accompaniment. Sorry, sometimes my Spanish kicks in and I'll probably say so.
I know a little bit. Oh,
that's not a word in English nor in Spanish. So when I heard what he was saying, that he wanted to be the bass and the guitar, I said, can we please have this? That will be my only request. I'm a very easy person to work with. But that would be like the only thing that I would want to be in there, because I think that my brain just put all three of them together, just like a trio would. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what I'm comfortable with. That's how I grew up listening to these boleros. So I think that's why I suggested it. And when I think, Charlie's all about homework and research. So I think he thought about it and he just was like, done, let's do that. And it just, every time I listen to the cuatro, it just takes me home.
That's the national instrument of Puerto Rico, and
that's cool.
And I want it home with me, I wanted that flavor in there.
And sort of speaking of research, Jose, typically when you hear the cuatro, you don't hear it in this format. No. Like, you don't hear it in a bolero trio. You're going to hear it in salsa, right? And a lot of other styles, right?
I mean, but it's
Jíbaro music.
Jíbaro music is a jíbaro is, I don't know what the equivalent in country people.
It's like it's just a like folk music.
Like I was gonna say, like folk,
like mountain people, kind of like the old style mountain people. Yeah, that's what we used to call a jíbaro. Is just a person that's a hardworking person, lives in the mountains, works the land. That's kind of like the root of the jíbaro. And jíbaro music was just people that got together with their instruments, and that's what they would play. I think the equivalent would be like the banjo a long time ago. Not that I'm comparing the cuatro with the banjo, pero it's that kind of concept where it's the working people who get together and play. So that very intricate kind of music, or I guess at that time, very complicated instrument.
I love the timbre of that instrument. It's so cool. It's really cool.
But that is usually the instrument of like the mountains and that kind of music, that it has been brought into this day and age. I mean, pop music has even plugged it in there, like Despacito. that song that went everywhere, that first riff that's so popular, that's a cuatro. So yeah, so it is that flavor where, you know, where it's home, but that we're trying to, you know, plug it into everything we do. And honestly, it's like putting like a seal into whatever you do, that, you know, that seal that says, you know, made in Germany or made in whatever. That's the seal of like made in Puerto Rico, because you hear the cuatro and you're like, oh, that's from home.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But
that's so cool.
In a bolero context, like, not to say cuatristas don't play bolero, they do it all the time, right? But what was unique about Jose was he really took on the role of the requinto and put it on the cuatro, and that became really apparent to me when we recorded. It's on our second record. We recorded both albums together, but there was a song we did called Obsession, just a classic bolero.
Wow.
And there's a really great bolero trio from really popular in the 1950s and 60s called Los Panchos, and they're these guys had everything. They could sing, all of them really well, beautifully. Their groove was like just rock solid, and they could all play their butts off. And I think it was from one of the Los Panchos records where it's this really like burning line at the beginning.
But it's it's part of the tune. Like, as soon as you hear that riff, you're like, oh, this is the song.
And I wasn't expecting Jose to learn that, but he had made the decision of like, this is part of this song. I'm going to learn this on my instrument. And it's like no small task. And to make matters worse, the night before, he and I were sitting in the living room and he was playing it. I'm like, oh man, that's awesome. But we actually moved it up a half a step. And, he was just such a pro about it. He's like, no problem. And like the next morning, I'm like, upstairs making some breakfast, and I hear like him downstairs shedding the lick.
Nice.
Opening line. And, it's a lot to ask of him.
Yes.
Let me ask you guys this. So how old does this music date back to? Like, what is the origin of Bolero and like
1880s?
I would say,
first documented origins, probably 1880s with Tristezas.
Sí, pero quizás maybe a little bit. So Bolero is actually, it comes from España, so Spain. And so you asked me the origins, and I don't want to put a date on it, but the first bolero as we know it was recorded was Tristezas, and it was the late
I think it was 1883. I think that's what it was.
However, I have to be honest with you. I don't want to. It's like asking, okay, when did flamenco or música gitana came to be? So I don't want to put a date on it, because it is so old. It is part of the culture. It's part of the history, because bolero is all about emotions, right? And it's all about emotions from the individual, but also the times or the country, or so it really it's an avenue to express an extreme emotion. It's all about extremes. There's no in between. I love you so much. I would die without you. I will love you beyond death. Or I hate you so much.
Right.
I want to, I just don't want you to be here anymore. So
I mean, it's beautiful either way. It's like there's like a passion involved in that style of music and from that culture that like we lack, in certain things that as Americans that we build and play and whatnot, besides the blues, involving from jazz and everything. But that's why I asked it, because I find like there's like such a rich passion involved. And it's guttural, like listening to your record, even the way that you sing and like the emotion it's palpable. It comes out. So that's what's cool about listening to those different styles of music. And that's why I'm always curious about just like origins of things, because, because it has probably been around for could have been around for centuries. It's just evolved to a point where it's like, this is when it became popular. You know what I mean?
Yes. And it started to be popularized. So Tristezas was in Cuba. So Cuba was like the birthing place of Bolero as we know it today. At least in el Caribe, so in the Caribbean, and then adjacent islands, took it in, and then it went to Mexico, and Mexico just took it and ran with it, and that's it. Yes, and then that's where the trios came to be, and that's where, for example, Los Panchos, they come from. It's a combination of Mexican and Puerto Rican players, but for me, I think that they in Mexico they embrace it so much because it's so close to rancheras. Because it's that emotional about like extreme emotions. So it was so congruent that I think that's why it kind of touched that, and they embraced it so much.
And there are some key differences between rancheras and boleros. Like they package really well together. There's a number of artists through the years that have albums that somebody singing rancheras and boleros, right? So there's some sonic similarities between the two, but like thematically they're a little bit different with the lyrics, and then also like harmonically it's a little bit differently too.
That's what I wanted to ask you, Aaron. So like what did you what I love, and now we were talking about this a little bit beforehand, like how I've gotten into salsa, especially like piano. Like I love the harmony in Latin piano, and that between that I could listen to that and I could listen to somebody play gospel piano all day, like just all day. What did you find was different from contemporary styles that you were playing harmonically on the guitar that was intriguing to you? Because feels harmonically like there's such a how do you pull out that emotion out of Mara? Like it's the music and the voice complementing each other, right? Like so like what is it about harmonically what you're doing that's different than what you've done before?
Well, I think the number one thing I've had to do is knock off any bullshit about my personal ego as a guitar player, and make sure that my role here is to support her voice and be a true accompanist. Right? This is what I do now, and that's to me is an art within itself. Like there are moments in our music where I have to do something that's a little more complex, and I'm like really excited about those moments. But most of the time, it's I need to lay down this groove, right? Like there is a distinct groove and sound to Bolero, and that was the thing that Charlie stepped in and kind of intervened on with me right from the beginning. So I give him a lot of credit, and obviously I've done a lot of listening and whatnot, but. So harmonically speaking, there are songs that we play where I would even suggest they are very similar to certain popular jazz standards. Like Sabor a Mi is a song that we play, and it has a form that reminds me a lot of a jazz standard, but the groove is very, very different. And a lot of times, Bésame Mucho, great example. That is often played. It's often played as a bossa, right? It's originally a bolero. And when you listen to the bolero, the original bolero versions, or like the Los Panchos bolero, they do a lot of simplifying on the chords. They're not always going to do that 2-5-1, right? Sometimes they're just going to go 5-1, right? So you have to like prune some of the harmony out if you're like looking at some of these songs. And as somebody who's played a lot of jazz music, I had to like start subtracting that from my mind, and I went through that exercise of with that Sylvia record.
I was just thinking of it every time he was we like to make it, we want to pay tribute to the classical piece. We're gonna do our twist to it, but we're gonna be true to it. At least that's what we've talked about it, but every time he was writing, he would be like, but that doesn't make sense.
Yes.
But that's like, why would he do that? Why this?
Yeah, so your ear, as somebody like who has played a lot of jazz or a lot of standards and stuff, your ear starts to go places.
You want to make it sound more expensive, right? It has to be.
but exactly, and you have to be okay with like, no, that's not cool here, because that actually starts to take away from what this really is when you start doing that. It's so you go through that exercise for a little bit, but then I got into a guitar player. Like I started latching, like just like anybody. Like when I was a teenager, I really latched to Angus Young of AC/DC, and I learned all his shit, and like that was my thing. And I'm sure there's a ton of other people that have similar stories about that. And like I've evolved over the years and learned from other players, but I started latching on early with our stuff to Los Panchos because their arrangements were beautiful. Their playing was beautiful. They were easy to listen to and understand. So that's kind of like where I started. And then I went through the exercise of Tutti un Pieri. So we have a record coming out in April, and it's
Man, you guys are firing them out.
I know. Yeah, we got to. So this is actually our first duo record, and I play on the 6 and the 7 string classical guitar on this one. And it's a it wasn't originally meant to be a record. It was originally going to be. It was like I want to just learn this guy's style of playing bolero. So Tutti un Piedi is kind of one of those early Latin guitar players that. Early Latin jazz guitar players, but very much a bolero guitarist as well. And when you listen to him, Charlie describes it as like homebrew harmony, right? Like it doesn't make sense on paper. It just sounds cool, and that's what he did. So I went through like the painstaking process of like lifting everything that this guy played for this record, and like just not to copy it 100%, but just to get in his head and get into that style. And back to your question about like harmony, I had to just forget everything, like, because where he would go on the guitar, there was no explanation for it aside from that's what he felt like doing because he thought it sounded good. And truth be told, it does sound good, even if it's not, even if that should technically be a dominant 7th chord there, and he played it as a minor, like whatever, it sounds good. And so it's been a huge learning process for me harmonically in terms of the groove. The groove is so important. And like when we play as a duo, we play a little different than we do with our full group because I have to take on a little more responsibility as a player. Mm-hmm. There's moments where I have to solo, and where that started was like very much like a jazz guitar player. I want to play a chord melody kind of solo, and it's gonna like that's what it's gonna sound like. And then Charlie kind of intervened. It was like, no, you're not. This is what you do. So, and he said, I give him a lot of credit. Last like year of my life has been a master's class with this guy. And he sat down and he was like, you need to kind of do a little bit of my world, which is keep a bass line going while you're doing some sort of improvisation. And he kind of helped me make those connections in my brain to, or at least got me on the track to do that. And I'm not Charlie Hunter. Like I can't do it like he does, but in the context that we play, I've gotten a lot better at that. So
that's huge. That is
huge. It's like relearning. And the other thing is I'm playing on this thing, right? This is not an electric guitar. This is, it's got a wider fingerboard, and then the 7-string version of it, which is sitting over here somewhere, is it's like playing on an aircraft carrier, right?
I was going to say it's like stringing a coffee table when you change strings, right? It's like,
so it's been a lot of learning and unlearning, right? And I've also, I started this conversation with, I lost a passion for playing guitar. Like I really did. And now it's like back in
with a vengeance.
Like I have so much fire for this now. And I would have never guessed it would have been playing bolero music. And like, I'm so into it. And it does, like, there's been like, I've had some imposter syndrome moments. Like here I am, this like white American guy. And I'm so grateful to the Latin community who has embraced me. And,
yes.
And
they love they love it.
Well,
They
yeah,
love you.
and I'm
Aw.
supporting my wife, which is like the most important thing here. But
That's what I was
it's
gonna say. I mean, it's regardless, it's gotta be, like, giving you guys both something because you're sharing this together, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you, it's been such a wild emotional thing for me because I would have, if you would have told me, Mara, next year you're gonna have 2 albums and one on the way, singing under your name, very long Latino Hispanic name, doing bolero music in Espanol, I would have been like,
Right.
sure. And it's shocking because we have been living in a very interesting time, and the socio political climate and cultural climate has been very difficult. And I'm not going to lie to you and say that I am not nervous when I am going to sing these tunes in absolute Spanish to an all non-speaking English, not Latino public. And
Mhm.
it's been so wild, the response that I have gotten. Even our first trial was with high schoolers. I was like, I'm gonna get eviscerated. And because that's a tough crowd, they
Mhm.
don't care. And they were so into it. They didn't know what I was saying, and even their comments, I they were like, "I honestly didn't mind not knowing what you were saying because it was just the emotion that was, in the tune, not only you singing but him playing, and how he would just know what you were going to do, and he was so in tune with you." And these are children talking about that. So when we did our concerts, the response was so overwhelmingly beautiful. Not only non-Spanish speakers coming and saying, wow, I didn't know what you were saying, I don't know what that was about. However, I was crying thinking about my grandparents, thinking about my children and those moments I spent with them. And or I had Latino people come to me and say, wow, how come your husband can play like that, our music with such emotion, and he doesn't know what you're singing probably, but he plays it so, like, my word for all of this is very visceral. I
Mhm.
mean, because sometimes I mean, when you said guttural before, I was like, that's it, guttural and visceral, where it comes from a place that just brings so much out. And he's able to do that, and people really latch to that and they see it. And he's so good at obviously he does a lot of homework, he's extremely disciplined. That's the military in us as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
that's
gonna
one thing I
say.
really walked away with was like a great amount of discipline to like hyper
Yes,
focus on something.
and rehearse
Yeah.
until you can't any, like, just like we are we're not rigid. I think for me, when I was in the military, music, it became painful. Aaron lost his passion for it, but for me it was painful, and it was I don't like using this word, but it was sort of triggering for me.
Mm.
Because it became painful, and every time we did it, Aaron would be like, why do you have such a bad mood when we were trying to do this?
Yeah, we had like, we were doing like a pop rock thing or
Yeah.
something, and she would just be like pissed off to go do it. And I'm like,
But I
I
wanted
don't.
to do it though, right? I wanted to do it because I thought it was important for me to do that and get past it, and move beyond the pain. But once we started doing this, it was so different. I mean, it was so it was very emotional for me in a very different context, because all of these are connected to not only my culture but my family and my people. There's a song that is called Alma Dentro, and it very much brings the image of my grandfather who passed away, and he was my father figure, to the room. And I can always see like his little white cotton head sitting in the in the public, and it gives me that space to sing to him. So it's very personal, very, like you said, guttural and visceral. And Aaron goes on that journey with me, which is just and supports me through that, even on stage, and not only in music, but when he can sense like, oh, that was particularly difficult for her, he will jump in and speak and talk about the next tune and whatnot. It's just such a good team.
Yeah.
And I think it translates not only in music, but it translates in every part of our lives, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our concerts are really interesting, Mark. And I'd like our first real concert. It was as a duo. It was on stage at Huggins Performance Center, which is like a great place to have a concert. And it was my first like, oh, this is really something, because in between songs you could hear people crying.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, like, we're really connecting with people. We're like, touching a nerve on people in ways. And that's like been our shows. It's we go out and people are like, they're happy, they're smiling, they're crying. There's like every emotion in the room is there. And it's such a great feeling as a performer to know that we like could bring that space together. And, we had we brought our full group down for our album release concert, which was at the Carolina Theater in Greensboro. And, I had no idea what was going to happen. Are people even going to come to this? Like, I don't know. And fortunately, we had a sold out audience, which was awesome. And just, the other thing, and this is also really important, is we don't overdo it on our live sound setup. We do what we need to do, and we try to be very sensitive to the room that we're in, because a lot of the rooms that we play in, they're designed for acoustic music. You don't have to have a lot. And I like to force people to listen a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So if we have people sitting in seats, and I think we just had a couple of area mics on the stage. That's all there was, just a couple of area mics just to add the ambiance a little bit through the system. But we didn't go like super crazy and put 5 mics on the guitar and things like amps and all sorts of stuff. And
I think the only amp was
Lowell had a bass amp, and he just had it on just a little bit. But we try to set that vibe for the audience too. So when they come in, they're going to get they're focused on us, like and some of the stuff we play, we intentionally, especially as a duo, we play it very quiet and try to expand the dynamic possibilities of what a song can be. So we play this song, we do it as a duo all the time. It's called Historia de un Amor, and it starts with just the guitar. And I think when I start that, I play it as quiet as I can, and you can feel the room just like shoo,
yeah,
right. And it's like you could hear a pin drop in there, and then we get to this moment in the song where Mata's voice just like explodes on it, and it's just that dynamic effect just captures people, and they're just hooked right from that moment. So we play a lot. We think about that kind of stuff a lot. Like, how do we expand the dynamic possibilities of what we're doing? I mean, it's a nylon string guitar, for Christ's sakes. Like, there's only so much you can do on that instrument, without anything else, right? So you have to make the most of what you have with it.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful.
I think that's part of it, like you may think that you can't do, those things, pero it's about the emotion of the tune, at least in this context, in Bolero, because it's all about that, guttural, visceral, emotional part, that those things matter, right? Not all emotions are not linear, like emotions are not just like, ooh, no, it's just the song is emotional. So just like emotions is a roller coaster, and it has that matiz, which is I don't know how to say that in English.
That's okay. I mean, I get it. It's
Like
almost
shades
like
of love.
Yeah, shades. That it has that coloring. It has
Mhm.
very different coloring depending on part of the tune. So it's very important to pay attention to those things, because if not, it's just okay. You did the song.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like what's happening is you guys are transporting people home too. Like when you're playing this music, you know what I mean? There could be a large faction of that where you are acting as a time machine and as a light speed, vehicle to get where they, need to be in that place. That whether that brings them tears of joy or tears of sadness or
I
whatever.
always ask,
Yeah.
are they good tears or are they bad tears?
And
I don't think that, tears of sadness necessarily could be bad. It's like I just lost my dad about a little over a month ago.
sorry.
I'm so sorry about
And thank you. And it was hard for several weeks. Like I would see pictures of him walking through the house in my house and just bawl. Now when I see pictures of him in my house, it takes me back to all the times when I had really awesome conversations with my dad, or got really good advice from my dad, or just had a moment sitting talking to my dad. It doesn't take me to a sad place. Even if a tear comes, it's not bad, so there's a lot that music can do, and it sounds like what you guys are doing is transcending normal music emoting, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, I
It's a
can.
gift.
Thank you. I think that it's also very organic. It's
Mhm.
not like we planned that. I don't sit here at our house and rehearse my ugly singing faces and fake emotion. It's just there's no way to escape it, because it is an organic thing. We don't sit here, and obviously it's intentional because we are moved by the tune, right?
Mhm.
But it's not like we plan those things. The dynamics that Aaron was talking about, and how that Historia de un Amor, when we do it together, when he starts real low, that was all organic. That was all him. We didn't talk about it, and we just go with it. When you overthink, like he was saying before, you have to unlearn. You have to be. I I was gonna comment earlier that to do what he has done, at least from my perspective, and obviously he's my husband, right? But watching a musician who's has an education in this, in music, right? But not in he did not grow up listening to emotional, bohemian music, Latino groove and music at all. And for him to be able to be at the level he's at, and how he has been able to, like he said, unlearn and shed those things, that takes a level of maturity, right?
Yeah.
Because to let go of those things that took so much from him, like time and money and investment, to be able to be mature and say, no, I'm just going to shed this because I want to know more, I want to learn more, and I want to be open to that I think it's very admirable. And I think that is why people like that's I think uh Baba, not that I'm comparing you with Charlie, but pero I always say, for me,
Do tell me.
Charlie, I know, but I think that it's true. For me, Charlie is the greatest guitarist in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But what separates him from everybody else is that he is curious. He has 40 years of, an incredible career, but this man keeps learning and wants to learn more. And he's open. He's not like, he sat here with the cuatro, and Jose Carrasquillo was, telling him about it. And he just grabbed it and started playing it very virtuosically. But we all looked at each other like, this is actually kind of hurtful, but
Right.
but at the same time, he's curious. He's
Yeah.
so curious, and I think that's what. And he's not. Again, he could have all the ego he wants because he's a machine. He's something that I don't think can be replicated ever, but
Mhm.
he has that humility. You know what I mean? Like, he just, okay, yeah, sure, I had a career, and there's so much more to learn. There's so much more to see. It doesn't matter where you're at. I can learn from you, and you can learn from me. And I think that separates musicians, really incredible musicians from the rest, I think.
Yeah, and the other thing about him that I've learned so much is Charlie's not afraid of anything.
Nope.
When it comes to playing music, he is not afraid, and a lot of us, like, we're afraid to play sometimes. And I had the privilege of working with jazz drummer Bobby Previtt. I won't say jazz drummer Bobby Previtt, composer, really just a great musician a couple weeks ago. And he said it over and over again. It was like a workshop kind of thing to us, and he was like, if you're gonna play, if you're not gonna play, shut the hell up.
Yeah.
Just and the lesson there was like, if you're gonna do this, like, bring it, all of it.
Own it. Be genuine.
Be curious. Fail. It's okay. Like, just do it. And Charlie's kind of got like that attitude as well. It's like, he probably succeeds a lot more because he's failed so much, to get where he is, and I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean that in a curiosity sense. Like, tried this, that didn't work. Let me try this. And
yeah, Charlie is a rare, he the way that I like to think about him is, and I say this all the time, my favorite musicians are people that take risks every record. And he is probably the leader of the pack in there, where he is not afraid. Like you said, he's not afraid if his fan base falls off after Naughty Dread. He'll do whatever he wants to do after he did that record. You know what I mean? Like, that record was a very seminal record for me because that's the first record I heard of his. And then from there on, I was hooked. But like, he reinvents himself every time he puts a record out. And to have him in your corner, like cheering you on and like being like, look, man, it's just music. Just do it, and do it passionately and do it genuinely and authentically. And the rest will take care of itself.
Yep. And he's such a, again, like, all stuff I'm learning just from, like, just being around him. Like, it's all about the groove. That's really what it is. It doesn't matter that I can, or you or anybody can, play these bebop lines over this or shred this, or it doesn't matter. Like, I mean, that's cool and all, but like, it's the groove and doing what's right for this, what you're playing and the setting that you're in, and just and doing something for the audience that you're playing for. Because if we're doing it for ourselves to some degree, but also for people that listen to us, like, we want them to have a good experience, whether it's live or listening to our records, whatever. We want them to feel moved in some way.
Yeah, man. Well, that's beautiful. I mean, and you know what I'll say to end before we go into this lightning round get down. I'm gonna have you guys do this together. But so I took one guitar lesson with Charlie, and it was probably 2012, around there, and it was virtual. And I will never forget this. I've said this on this channel before to other people, but like, something that he said to me that will stick with me the rest of my life, and something that I think about every time I step on stage, is he said, dude, whatever you do, you don't want to be a mile wide and an inch deep. You want to be an inch wide and a mile deep. And I was like, shit. I was like, yep. And I remember in that moment I said, thank you, Yoda, and he laughed. But like, that stuck with me, and it will forever. And what I think he does well, and he's obviously done with you guys, is like, he brings you out of you. Like, I remember doing something and I was using a pick, and then I dropped it and I was playing with my fingers, and he was like, whoa, what would you just do right there? And I was like, I just put my pick down. And he's like, never pick a pickup again. That's he was like, that sounded like you. That didn't sound like anyone that you listen to. He's like, I can hear your influences coming. I can hear the Schofield coming out of you. I can hear whatever. But he was like, don't be you, And that's something I think that he kind of blesses you guys with, and like gets you guys to come out of your own shells and be you with this new music. And because you're carrying a tradition, right? You're carrying a musical tradition on. So how can we authentically do it, but do it in a way that is us?
Mm-hmm.
And that's so cool. And it seems like that's what's happening. You guys sound so great together. So
let me tell you, it was complicated for me to come to terms with that, though. Like, because a lot of times people would be like, oh, why do you sing so low? And why do you vibrate your voice like this or that? So, because the stylized, I will never forget this. Charlie was like, I mean this in the best way possible. You sound like an 80-year-old woman singing these tunes. And I was like, thank you. That's actually how my abuela sings these tunes. And I grew up listening to her. Therefore, I don't know any other way to sing this. And I have gotten so, like, I had in the past gotten, like, that feedback that's kind of hurtful because it's not positive, like not necessarily positive, but constructive feedback. So for him to say, no, that authentic part of you is what is the good stuff. And so it was hard for me to come to terms with that. But it was beautiful. It was so beautiful to say, oh, so it is cool. Oh, okay. Now I'm just going to push through and do it more and explore more on that part, which has honestly kind of like evolved in the next projects that we're thinking and thinking through. Last night we were doing some tunes, and I for the first time ever I was like, can we record that and send it to Charlie, because I really think that's really different and really cool. And so it's the first time I get to explore those things, and now it's just going it that journey. It's been really beautiful, and where it's going, and I can see that it could go. It's really wonderful. And like you just said, it is me. It has nothing to do with any external, it's my own journey, just like Aaron's own journey through that. So I absolutely agree with your statement about Charlie just bringing out that, true self. So
that's amazing, you guys. Well, I cannot wait to see how things evolve for you too, like how the music evolves and the different kind of things you guys get into, because it's exciting to see people doing cool, interesting things compared to what's happening right now in the music industry, and taking chances on music, regardless of what style or genre of music people are doing. Like, I'm always very into living dangerously. Like I said, like I love music that's just like on the edge of a knife. And I kind of like what you said earlier about, like, Aaron, when you were like, is anyone going to show up? Are people even going to like this? Or like, what's going on? Like, that's like the whole imposter thing. But there's part of that element that's kind of exciting. Like, you know what? Like, do we even care? We love what we're doing. Like, as long as we show up and we show that we love what we're doing, everybody else is going to dig it too. They're going to have a good time.
100%. That's awesome. What you just said is my saying all the time. Like, okay, if they don't show, it's not going to matter in the end, because I'm going to have a blast, and we're going to have a blast. And this is the moment where I get to do this that I would have never thought that I could do. So yes, that's exactly what I say every time. It doesn't matter if there's one person, a million, I'm going to have such a blast, and sharing this moment.
That's so dope. That's so dope. And then you can come home, Mara, and you can be like, hey, Aaron, dude, measure 32. You messed up that one.
I don't, let me tell you, I'm like one of those jibaros in the mountains. I don't count. I do and I don't. It's like we were saying the other day. Oh, I was listening to that horrible Sirius XM, the best of the 2010s or 2000. I know, horrifying, but I know every single horrible pop tune. And then Aaron looks at me, yeah, but you forget measure blah blah. And I'm like,
you forget there's 4 extra bars and beso me mucho.
And I'm like, I can't even argue, because it's true.
These guitar players and their nerdy counting and gear and stuff.
But it is music from the country. It really is. And if I'm constantly counting and thinking, and it's just not going to be as good, right? Because I'm thinking about Pancho with his guitar, after working a really long week, and he sits down with his friend Pepe, and they're just with their little guitars just playing some tunes, you know what I mean? Heartfelt tunes. So I don't think about it technically like that. See, I think about it more in like the
well, that's sort of baked into the spirit of the music too, which is
right.
like there's a great deal of flexibility that goes on, and as somebody accompanying her, I just have to be aware of that. Not that and she doesn't give herself enough credit. Like, she sings wonderfully in time, and she has a great sense of time with the melody and where she places
this genre.
for what we do. And like, so that's all like very much there, and like very rarely, and she'll do things in the moment that I think are intentional in the moment, and I have to kind of connect with her in that moment and help her bring that out. So that's not a mistake. It's just the flexibility of the music or the canvas that we're painting on, right?
That's fun though. I feel like that's super fun. That's awesome, man. That's so cool, guys. All right, so we're going to do the lightning round get down, but this season I've been doing dad jokes right before this. So I got a good dad joke for you.
Oh, babe, tell them.
Do you have one too?
She's got a book of dad jokes that she tortures me with.
Oh, yeah. Well, then you might like this. You might even know this one, Mata. I don't know, but all right. What do you call a line of men waiting to get haircuts?
It's a mansplaining. Something about mansplaining.
A barbecue. Do you know the other one that would be good for this, but I already told it this season is why don't monsters eat ghosts?
Oh, I know this.
You know this?
Yes. Do you know it, Aaron?
No, I don't know it.
Because they taste like sheep. All right, here we go. Let's fire this up. So I got a metronome on at 112 BPM for y'all. I'm going to ask you guys 10 questions, and you both can chime in at the same time. And if you want, you guys can explain your answers. If you don't want to, you don't have to. You can burn right through it. All right?
Okay.
First one is always the same. Lennon or McCartney?
McCartney?
I wouldn't know. Marc Anthony.
Dracula or Frankenstein?
Oh, Dracula.
Frankenstein.
Ooh.
Dracula because he's a vampire.
Sitting down to watch a movie, suspense or comedy?
Comedy.
Comedy, yeah.
Because suspense, I always scream really loud.
Yeah, we just went through that on that Netflix House of Usher thing, and
yeah.
Oh man, that
I'm
thing
a horrible person. I mean, it's amazing, but I'm the worst.
All right, in the spirit of Halloween, Milky Way or Snickers?
Milky Way.
Snickers. It has more fun in it, like peanuts.
Yeah. Pumpkins, carve or paint a pumpkin?
So I had never done that. I will choose the painting.
Same, painting.
Because it's kind of gross.
It's like a little bit like brains in there. It's weird.
Oh,
tricks or treats?
Tricks.
Treats.
Spend the night in a cemetery or haunted house?
I'm gonna go with the cemetery.
I'd rather die and haunted myself.
All right. Licorice, yummy or gross?
Yummy.
It just depends.
Yummy. Especially, I like the black ones, but I grew up eating. I know. See,
I don't even want to be in the same room as it.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Anise. I grew up eating, like, you know what I mean. Like that's part of some of our stuff that we do back home. So yes, licorice all the way, even the black one.
All right. Ghosts, I believe, or no, I do not believe in ghosts.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that a question?
Yes. Do you believe or not?
Oh, okay. No, I do not.
I believe that people are haunted by their traumas.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
So it's like a metaphorical ghost.
Getting deep. Or like Ted Lasso said, she was. Remember when boss was like, Ted, you believe in ghosts? He's like, I do, but more importantly, I think they should believe in themselves.
There you go.
All right. Here's the last one, guys. This is either the hardest or the easiest.
Okay.
If you guys could take one album, doesn't have to be your favorite album of all time, but if you could take one album and erase it from your memory, just so you could go back and experience it for the first time again, what album would that be?
Oh my gosh.
I can go first on this one.
Yes, please.
That album for me would be Sylvia Resash, Canta a Sylvia Resash.
Papa.
So that is the most beautiful.
It's the same for me.
It's the most beautiful piece of work I have ever heard in my life.
Can you send that to me?
Yeah.
Can you send me a link to what that is? I want to check it out.
It's the most beautiful thing I have ever
And that's
heard.
what our April album is a tribute to. It's
cool.
It is a treasure in Puerto Rico and among the people of Puerto Rico. And there's a lot of people outside of there who've heard it, but here in the US, I don't think it's got that same level of popularity for obvious reasons. Like, it's just not something that's made into our mainstream. And but it is something that I think every musician and songwriter and guitar player should listen to.
Yeah. So context, because I think it's important. The singer-songwriter, her name was Sylvia Resash. She was, I would say, the most prolific and most beautiful singer-songwriter, Puerto Rican singer-songwriter. Well, one of them, because yes, but she was a female, and honestly, I think she was born way out of time. You know what I mean? She was so ahead of so many things, and she wasn't afraid to speak about anything, especially as a female. Her pieces are very atrevida, which means like she took those chances, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And her pieces are so visceral. It's like, for me, I feel like she knows me. She knows my brain, my insides, when I would hear it. And I will never forget this. I heard her music for the first time, and that was when I truly felt that I fell in love with Bolero. And it was my teacher in high school. And his nickname for me is La Bruja, which means the witch. His name was Victor Torres. He passed, and for me, I always have, when I perform, I have a necklace that says Bruja, because he was the first person who believed in me, so I like to carry him with me in that little context. But Sylvia Resash, she passed away when she was 40.
Oh wow!
It's maybe
very
not quite
young.
40, but she was really
very young. And
it was alcohol, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yep.
But her music absolutely lives on. And that album that he was talking about, and that we're going to be releasing the tribute to, was actually found after she passed, and they were taking care of her belongings at her home, and they found that recording with Tutti Umpieri, and it was them just sitting at
the kitchen table,
her kitchen,
which is some little like whatever they had in 1958 to record music, and it sounds like you're sitting in their kitchen with them. And it's
her lyrics are just
and his guitar playing, Tutti Umpieri's guitar playing is incredible on that record.
But so my teacher showed me her songs, and I was doing her tunes, but I didn't know that there was an album until I went to college, and I went to this the dean of the theater school, his house, and somebody commented to him like, "Oh yeah, she loves Sylvia Resash," and he was like, "What do you mean?" So he had the pleasure to know her and her family, and he comes out of the room with that CD, and I will never forget it. I was like, "There's an album of her," and I still have it, and it's been, every time I feel disconnected with myself or my home country, that's where I go to. So I absolutely agree with Aaron. That would be the album I would erase and go back and experience it once again, because it was so shocking to hear somebody like undress me, I guess, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's amazing.
And put myself into words. But she was, I mean, a few generations behind me.
Yeah.
So it was shocking to do that. So yes, same.
That's amazing. Look at that. So, you know, Dracula and Frankenstein, but you guys connected on the important one. So guys, tell everybody, here's some BV, thanks for moderating the chat per usual, BV. Thank you so much. Let me put up some links here.
Oh, thank you.
So everybody can see what's going down with this lovely duo we've got on the show tonight. Several links, but go visit them all. Go buy their music. Go buy all the merch you guys have. Support them so they can get out there and do this some more for y'all. Anything you guys want to tell the people about? I know you got the record coming out in April. We mentioned that a few times.
Yeah, we do have a Christmas single if you're into the holiday music. So that comes out in I think the 17th. So just a couple weeks. Triste Navidades with our full group.
Oh, nice.
And that song is from the composer Rafael Hernandez, which very, very prolific and Puerto Rican composer.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I see it on the screen. We do have CDs for Boleros Clásicos Volumen Uno, which is Volume 1, and Volumen Dos from our full recording session earlier this year, and that's the one where we were all around a single microphone. You'll see some videos of that on our YouTube page as well. But we always welcome anybody that still listens to CD. If you want to support us, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
And all I would like to say is thank you. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to do something like this, for me to share my culture, my music, a part of me and my country, my people. So thank you. Thank you for just being interested in being curious and supporting. So
curious and not judgmental, right? That's what that says right there. I know I'm a little bit crazy about Ted Lasso, but anyway,
me too. So yeah, I wanted to come in like full gear, but
that's okay, guys. Well, you know what? It's absolutely my pleasure. I was so happy to do it. And Side Hustle Records, go check out the roster of artists that Side Hustle has going on right now, because there's such a breadth of music from you guys to George to Victoria, and all the stuff that you guys are all doing. It's so varied and so cool. I love how the fact that their catalog of musicians just kind of like touches almost everything. It's just really rad. So, but thank you again so much for doing this, guys. Hang out for 1 second. Everybody else, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.
See ya. Believe.